Keanu Reeves walked through the busy airport, pulling a small black bag behind him. His clothes were simple, nothing fancy, just a worn-out jacket and jeans. Many people didn't even recognize him at first glance. He wore a cap low over his face and moved with calm steps, not like a big Hollywood star. He didn't have any bodyguards with him, no assistant, no crowd, just him, alone, walking quietly. He had just finished a long shoot for his movie and was finally heading home. He was tired, physically and mentally, and had looked forward to this flight for one reason: rest. He had booked a first-class ticket, something he rarely did, but today, he just wanted comfort and peace. It was supposed to be a simple flight, nothing special. Keanu reached the check-in counter, gave the staff his ID, and waited silently as the lady behind the desk typed something into her computer. Her smile slowly faded, and her eyes scanned the screen twice. She looked confused, then nervous. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves," she said politely. "There seems to be an issue with your seat. First class is full." Keanu looked at her without any emotion, then smiled a little. "It's okay," he said gently. The woman seemed even more uncomfortable now. "We've moved you to economy class. There was an overbooking situation. I really apologize." He simply nodded. "That's fine," he said, and accepted the new boarding pass. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't mention his name or fame. He just moved to the side and checked the gate number like any regular passenger. People nearby started noticing. A few of them looked closely. Was that really Keanu Reeves, the action star? Why was he flying alone? Why was he okay being downgraded? Most celebrities would have made a scene, shouted, or demanded attention. But Keanu didn't do any of that. He walked to security like everyone else, took off his shoes, put his bag on the belt, and moved through without saying a word. The security officer looked at him twice, but said nothing after passing through. Keanu stopped at a small coffee shop near the gate and bought a bottle of water and a sandwich. He sat down at the far end, away from everyone, took out a book, and started reading. Still, no one from the airline had offered to fix the mistake. Soon, the boarding call was made, passengers lined up, and Keanu joined the economy queue like everyone else. No VIP line, no special attention. He waited patiently as the line moved slowly. The person in front of him dropped their bag, and Keanu bent down to help them, quietly, without saying much. Once on the plane, he moved down the aisle, passing through first class, the very place he was supposed to sit. Plush leather seats, champagne glasses ready. A different world. But he didn't look upset. He just kept walking. He reached his seat, middle row. No window, no extra legroom. He quietly placed his bag in the overhead bin and sat down. He folded his long legs as best as he could, leaned back, and closed his eyes for a moment. The passenger sitting next to him couldn't believe it. "Is that Keanu Reeves?" One whispered. "No way," said another. "What's he doing back here?" A young boy across the aisle looked at him. Wide-eyed, Keanu smiled and gave him a small wave. The boy smiled back. His parents looked confused but nodded in thanks. As more people boarded, they began noticing him too. Some pulled out their phones. Others tried not to stare. But the news began to spread. Keanu Reeves is sitting in economy. In the first-class cabin, the staff were preparing for takeoff. One of the attendants looked at the passenger list again and suddenly frowned. "Hey," she whispered to her colleague. "Wasn't Keanu Reeves supposed to be in seat 1A? The other crew member looked surprised. "Yeah, but he's not here. I thought maybe he canceled." "No, I saw him," another crew member added. "He boarded. I think he's in economy." "What? Are you serious?" They all exchanged looks, surprised and a little guilty. They knew something had gone wrong. Celebrities often got special care. But Keanu hadn't even asked. He just accepted what happened without a word. None of them could understand why he didn't say anything. He was a global superstar, yet he acted like a regular person. His silence said more than any angry complaint ever could. Back in economy, Keanu quietly opened his sandwich, took a bite, and returned to his book. Around him, the whispers continued. People didn't know whether to talk to him or let him be. But everyone noticed one thing: he was humble. And while no one had said anything yet, this small moment, this simple act of kindness and grace, was about to become something much bigger than anyone on that plane could imagine. Keanu had no idea that his quiet choice to stay calm, to stay kind, and to stay human would soon inspire thousands across the world. It all started with a missed seat, but it wouldn't end there. As the plane's doors closed and the flight prepared to take off, the passengers in economy slowly began to realize who was sitting among them. The news had spread quietly, but quickly. Keanu Reeves was on their flight. Not in first class, but right there with them, in the cramped seats of economy. People started stealing glances at him, some trying to act normal, others unable to hide their surprise. There was a soft buzz of whispered conversations around the cabin. "Is that really him?" Someone asked in a low voice. "Yes, that's Keanu Reeves," another replied. "Why isn't he in first class?" That's strange. Despite the whispers, Keanu remained calm and focused on his book. He didn't look up, didn't wave, and didn't seem bothered by all the attention. It was clear to everyone watching that he was not there to seek fame or show off. He was just a man tired from work, wanting a quiet flight home. A young boy sitting a few rows away spotted him and couldn't keep his eyes off Keanu. The boy's excitement was obvious, and he whispered to his mother, "Mom, that's the man from the movies. Can I say hi?" The mother smiled but told him to be polite and not disturb the actor. Still, the boy couldn't resist, and when Keanu looked up from his book, the boy gave him a shy wave. Keanu smiled warmly and nodded in return. That simple moment made the boy's whole day, and people nearby noticed how kind Keanu was even in such a crowded and uncomfortable place. Some passengers tried to take photos secretly, but most knew it wasn't right to bother him. Instead, they just watched quietly. Impressed by his humble nature, one woman whispered to her friend, "Most stars would never sit here without complaining. But he just takes it like a regular person." The flight attendants also noticed the passengers' reactions. They were preparing snacks and drinks but kept stealing looks at Keanu. He moved quietly through the aisles, polite to the crew, thanking them softly whenever someone helped him. A young flight attendant, who was a big fan, gathered the courage to say hello during a slow moment. "Mr. Reeves, it's such an honor to have you on board," she said nervously. Keanu smiled and replied softly, "Thank you, I appreciate it." The crew admired how down-to-earth he was, especially after hearing about the seat mix-up. They shared small stories among themselves about how many celebrities demanded special treatment. But Keanu was different. Meanwhile, some passengers started sharing the story on social media. Pictures and quiet videos showing Keanu reading his book and sitting quietly in economy began to appear online. The flight hashtag started trending locally as people talked about the unexpected sight. In first class, the empty seats where Keanu should have been made the staff feel awkward. The stewardess who had checked his ticket earlier was now convinced that this humble man deserved better. She wished she could do something to fix the mistake, but the rules were strict, and the plane was nearly full. The pilot and co-pilot occasionally glanced back through the cabin window. They had heard from the crew about the situation, but didn't want to interfere yet. However, the captain quietly admired Keanu's grace under pressure, thinking to himself that true greatness was shown in moments like this, not on fancy seats. Back in economy, the atmosphere shifted as more people realized that a big star was sharing their space. Some passengers started small conversations about movies Keanu had starred in, and he listened politely whenever someone mentioned a favorite scene. Despite the cramped space and noise, Keanu remained patient, never complaining. He folded his arms, leaned back, and tried to relax as best as he could. Some children nearby were shy, but looked over curiously, and Keanu always smiled gently, making them feel comfortable. A few older passengers shared stories about meeting famous people before, but most agreed they had never seen anyone act as humble as Keanu. They admired his behavior silently. Feeling inspired by his humility and kindness, the plane finally began taxiing to the runway, and the flight attendants made their final preparations. Some of the crew whispered that Keanu's attitude was a reminder to them all fame didn't have to change a person. And sometimes, kindness could make a bigger impact than any award or red carpet. Passengers settled into their seats, some still glancing at Keanu with respect and awe. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, ready for the flight. Ahead, the story of a famous man flying quietly in economy was already taking shape. But what no one knew yet was that the captain was about to make a decision that would surprise everyone and change the mood on the plane completely. For now, Keanu sat with a peaceful smile, showing the world that even in difficult or unexpected moments, grace and humility shine the brightest. And sometimes, being just a regular person is the greatest act of all. The plane had now reached cruising height, and everything inside was calm. The soft sound of engines hummed through the cabin, and flight attendants started moving down the aisles with carts, giving out snacks and drinks. Most passengers were still excited about having Keanu Reeves on board. People kept whispering to each other, sharing glances, and trying to act normal in the galley near the front, where the crew prepared meals and rested between their duties. Flight attendants started to talk quietly among themselves. One of them, Sarah, couldn't stop thinking about what happened at the gate. She was the one who handed Keanu his new boarding pass, and she still felt guilty about moving such a famous, kind man to economy. Sarah turned to her coworker, James, and said in a low voice, "Did you see how he reacted? He didn't even argue. Most people would be so angry if their first-class seat was taken, but he just accepted it like it was nothing." James nodded. "I know. I've seen so many passengers complain over much smaller problems. Some shout. Some demand free stuff, but he just smiled and said it was fine." Other attendants joined in. They agreed that Keanu's attitude was rare. Someone added, "He even helped that woman with her bag. And he thanked me when I handed him his drink. He's so polite." They started comparing stories of difficult passengers. All of them remembered times when celebrities demanded the best food, or got angry if something was wrong with their seat. But Keanu was different. There was something special about his quiet way of handling things. Sarah decided to check the flight list again. She wanted to be sure there wasn't some mistake. Maybe they could still find a way to move Keanu back to first class. She looked at the screen and double-checked the names, but first class was completely full. There wasn't a single empty seat. James noticed her disappointment. "It's not your fault," he said kindly. "He doesn't seem upset. He probably just wants some peace. Maybe he likes being with regular people." But the whole crew felt a little bit ashamed. It was clear to them that Keanu should have been treated better. They didn't want the other passengers to think they had ignored a celebrity on purpose. They knew their jobs depended on making everyone comfortable, no matter who they were. As they talked, the cabin supervisor came by to check on things. She listened to their conversation and agreed. "We'll make sure Mr. Reeves gets the best service we can give in economy. Let's check on him more often. Bring him extra snacks or a better pillow. Just small things to make him feel welcome." The crew made a plan. They would be extra polite, bring him warm towels, and see if he needed anything. It wasn't first class, but they wanted to show their respect in any way they could. A little later, Sarah walked down the aisle. She stopped at Keanu's row and gave him a warm smile. "Would you like another drink, sir?" she asked gently. Keanu smiled back. "Thank you. That would be great," he said softly. She brought him juice and a second packet of cookies. He thanked her again, and she felt a little better. Back in the galley, the attendants shared stories about Keanu's movies. "I love The Matrix," James said. "And John Wick, he's so cool in those films." Another attendant, Priya, said, "But he's even cooler in real life. Look how kind he is. He's sitting back there. No complaints, just reading his book." Their admiration grew as the flight went on. Some even wished they could take a photo with him. But they all agreed to respect his privacy. They just wanted him to have a good flight during the meal service. One attendant decided to slip in an extra dessert for Keanu. She put a little note on it. "Thank you for being a kind passenger. From your grateful crew." Keanu saw the note, smiled, and nodded at the attendant with real gratitude. Meanwhile, other passengers started to notice the crew's kindness towards Keanu. Some wondered why the flight attendants kept checking on him, but most realized they were just treating him the way he deserved. In the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot had started hearing bits of the story. One crew member quietly told the captain what happened at the gate. The captain listened, then looked thoughtful. He had flown many celebrities in his career, but this story was different. He didn't complain at all? The captain asked. The crew member shook her head. "No, sir. He just accepted it and thanked us." The captain nodded slowly. "That's the kind of passenger you remember," he said. He went back to his controls, but the story stayed in his mind. He wondered if there was a way to make things right for Keanu. All through the cabin, people watched Keanu's calm, gentle behavior. Children whispered about seeing a real movie star. Parents told their kids, "He's famous, but look how normal he is." Even those who didn't care much for movies were touched by his quiet kindness. By now, everyone on the plane from passengers to crew was talking about Keanu Reeves. Not because he was acting like a star, but because he wasn't. The more the crew talked among themselves, the more they wanted to do something special. Little did they know, the captain was thinking the same thing, and soon, something truly unexpected would happen, changing the flight for everyone, especially for Keanu. In the quiet space of the cockpit, the captain sat focused on his controls. The sky outside was a deep blue, clouds floating far below. For most of the flight, he was busy with the usual checks and radio calls. But today, something kept pulling his thoughts away from the instruments. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had just heard from the cabin crew. Keanu Reeves, the famous actor, was sitting in economy because of an airline mistake, and he didn't complain at all. The captain, whose name was Captain Harris, had been flying for more than 20 years. He had met all kinds of people in that time: business travelers, nervous families, even politicians and athletes. Many times he had seen famous people get upset over the smallest issues. Some demanded better seats or special food. Some had shouted at the staff if things didn't go perfectly, but this was different. Keanu's story, as told by the crew, was a surprise. He remembered Sarah, the flight attendant, come into the cockpit during a quiet moment. She looked troubled. "Sir, I just wanted you to know that Mr. Reeves is sitting in economy. There was a mix-up. We feel so bad. He's been so kind about it." "Not a single complaint." Captain Harris nodded. "Thank you for telling me." He could see how much this bothered the crew. They respected Keanu, not just as a movie star, but as a good human. The captain thought for a moment. He knew he couldn't move anyone out of first class now. The seats were all full, and the rules were strict. But it didn't feel right to let things end this way. He looked over at his co-pilot, who had been listening quietly. "Have you ever seen The Matrix?" Captain Harris asked with a small smile. The co-pilot grinned. "Of course, who hasn't?" They both laughed softly, for a moment forgetting the stress of flying. The captain grew serious again. "You know, it's not about being a movie star. It's about how you act when things go wrong." He thought for a while, then picked up the intercom. He called the lead flight attendant and asked her to come to the cockpit. A few minutes later, the lead attendant arrived. She was nervous, but curious. "Is everything all right, sir?" she asked. Captain Harris nodded. "Yes, I just wanted to talk about Mr. Reeves. The crew tells me he's been very polite, even though he lost his seat in first class." She nodded. "He's been wonderful, sir. He's helping people and treating everyone with respect. It's rare, especially for someone so famous." The captain nodded. "I want to do something special for him. Not because he's a star, but because he's a good person. I want him to know we noticed his kindness." They talked quietly for a few minutes, thinking about what they could do. The captain then remembered the jump seat, the spare seat in the cockpit that was sometimes used by off-duty crew or special guests. It wasn't a luxury seat, but it had a view of the sky and was away from the noise of the main cabin. He turned to the lead attendant. What if we invited him to sit in the cockpit for a part of the flight? He could see how everything works. Maybe he'd like the quiet and the view. The attendant's eyes lit up. That would be amazing. I think he would love it. He seems like someone who enjoys new experiences. Captain Harris smiled. Then, let's do it. He told her to quietly ask Keanu if he would like to visit the cockpit after the next meal service, and to make sure he felt comfortable. As the attendant left, the co-pilot looked at the captain and said, "That's a nice gesture, sir. I think he'll remember it." Captain Harris just smiled, feeling that it was the right thing to do. Back in the main cabin, the crew talked quietly. They were happy and excited. The idea of inviting Keanu Reeves to the cockpit felt like a small way to say thank you for his kindness. Some whispered about what he might say, or if he would be surprised. The lead attendant waited until the meal service was finished, then walked down the aisle to Keanu's seat. She leaned in and spoke softly, so no one else could hear. "Mr. Reeves, the captain would like to invite you to the cockpit for a short visit. If you're interested, you don't have to, of course, but we wanted to thank you for your patience and kindness today." Keanu looked up, surprised but curious. He smiled and nodded. "That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much." The attendant smiled back and promised to come get him when the time was right. As she walked away, Keanu felt a little excited. He had never been inside a cockpit during a real flight before. While he waited, he looked out the window at the sky. His heart felt light for Keanu, but for everyone on that flight. Before he left, Captain Harris said, "Thank you for reminding us what real class looks like. Sometimes it's not about the seat you're in, but the way you treat people along the way." Keanu nodded, humbled, and said, "Thank you, Captain. This means more to me than you know." Emma escorted Keanu back to his seat. The passengers watched as he returned. Some clapped softly again, others just smiled, glad to have witnessed something good. Keanu sat down quietly, and the young boy from earlier whispered, "Did you fly the plane?" Keanu grinned and replied, "Not this time, maybe someday." The flight continued as usual, but everyone could feel the difference. For the rest of the journey, there was an extra sense of happiness in the air. One person's kindness had spread throughout the whole plane, and a simple flight had turned into a memory none of them would ever forget. Keanu Reeves sat quietly in his seat after his visit to the cockpit. For a few minutes he just looked out the window, thinking about the amazing view he had just seen. The bright sunlight touched the tops of the clouds, turning them gold and pink. The world looked peaceful from above, and Keanu felt grateful for this special moment. It was not something he expected when he first walked into the airport that day. All around him, people were still talking about what had just happened. Some passengers whispered to each other, "Did you see Keanu go into the cockpit? What do you think he saw up there?" Even the children looked excited, hoping to ask him questions later. The young boy from earlier watched Keanu with wide eyes, his own mind full of dreams about flying a plane. The crew in the cabin kept glancing at Keanu. They were happy to see him smiling. The flight attendants felt a sense of pride because they had helped turn a bad situation into a good one. The captain and co-pilot, too, were pleased that they could give something special to a passenger who had shown so much respect and patience. Keanu's experience in the cockpit had been simple but meaningful. The jump seat where he sat was not big or fancy. It was just a small fold-down chair behind the pilots. Still, it was a place that not many people ever got to see. From there, he had watched the pilots work together, talking in calm voices, pressing buttons, and checking screens. Everything looked so different from the front of the plane. It was a world of quiet teamwork, where every action mattered. He remembered how Captain Harris had explained each instrument, showing him how the plane was kept safe in the sky. The co-pilot, Mark, had pointed to the moving line on the screen and told him, "That's where we are right now, heading home." Keanu felt like a child again. Learning something new, the pilots treated him with kindness and respect, just as he had treated the crew and passengers. The pilots had also told him stories about other flights, some scary, some funny, and some that changed their lives. Keanu listened with real interest, asking questions and laughing at their jokes. When he put on the headset and heard voices from air traffic control, he felt like he was in one of his own movies. But this was real life, not acting. When it was time to return to his seat, Keanu thanked the captain and co-pilot again. He said, "You have the best office in the world." Captain Harris smiled and replied, "It's special because of days like this." They shook hands, and Keanu promised to remember the kindness they had shown him. As he walked back down the aisle with Emma, the lead flight attendant, the whole cabin seemed to feel lighter. People smiled at him, some quietly, others with big grins. Even those who hadn't cared about celebrities before were happy to see how a simple act of kindness could make the whole flight better. Keanu sat down and fastened his seatbelt. He put away his book and just enjoyed the feeling of being part of something special. The young boy next to him finally got brave enough to speak. He leaned over and asked, "Was it cool in the cockpit?" Keanu nodded. "It was amazing. You could see everything. The pilots were very kind." The boy's eyes sparkled, and he whispered, "I want to be a pilot one day." Keanu smiled. "You can do it. Just keep dreaming." People nearby listened to their short conversation and felt warmed by Keanu's gentle words. A woman behind him said softly, "Thank you for being so nice. Most people in your place would have been angry." Keanu turned and smiled. "Everyone deserves kindness. It doesn't matter who you are." Throughout the rest of the flight, the crew continued to check on Keanu and the other passengers. They brought extra snacks and made sure everyone was comfortable. The mood in the plane was friendly and peaceful. It was like a small family, brought together for a few hours by a simple flight and a story that was spreading quickly online. Emma, the flight attendant, even saw a few passengers writing about the flight on their phones. Some shared what happened with friends and family, posting photos of the sky and a few blurry shots of Keanu in economy. The story started to grow. People all over the world would soon learn about how a Hollywood star acted with humility and how an airline crew went the extra mile to make a passenger feel respected. As the plane began to descend for landing, Captain Harris made one more announcement. His voice was calm and kind. "We'd like to thank all our passengers for flying with us today. And a special thank you to Mr. Keanu Reeves, who reminded us all that true class comes from the heart, not the seat." The passengers clapped. Some even cheered quietly. Keanu gave a small wave, still humble, never looking for attention. When the plane landed, everyone waited for their turn to get off. As Keanu stood in the aisle, people shook his hand or simply smiled at him. A few took quick photos, but most just thanked him for showing what real kindness looked like. The boy waved goodbye, promising he would remember this flight forever. The airline staff at the door thanked Keanu as he stepped off the plane. "You made our day better, sir," one of them said. Keanu just smiled. "You made mine better too," he replied. As he walked through the airport, blending back into the crowd, he felt happy, not because of fame or special treatment, but because, for a few hours, everyone had treated each other with respect. People on the flight would tell the story to their friends, sharing how a movie star became just another traveler and how, for a little while, kindness and humanity made the journey unforgettable. The flight was over, but the feeling would last much longer. And so would the lesson. True class isn't about where you sit, but how you treat the people sitting next to you. The plane had landed safely, and people were slowly getting up from their seats. Some were stretching their legs, others were looking for their bags, but almost everyone kept glancing at Keanu Reeves. Even though he was a world-famous actor, he acted just like any other passenger, waiting for his turn, being patient, and smiling at the people around him as the line moved forward. A few brave passengers stopped to shake Keanu's hand or thank him for being so kind during the flight. One woman said, "You made this flight special for all of us." Keanu replied with a gentle smile, "Thank you, I just tried to be kind." A little girl walked up and handed him a small drawing she had made during the flight. Keanu knelt down to thank her and promised to keep her picture. The girl's parents smiled, and everyone nearby felt touched by the moment. A few passengers, excited by what they had seen, quickly posted photos and stories online. Some had snapped a picture of Keanu sitting in economy. Others had caught a moment of him returning from the cockpit. Within minutes, social media started to buzz. "Keanu Reeves was on my flight, sitting in the middle seat." One tweet read, another post said, "He didn't ask for anything special, just acted like a normal guy, so humble." People from all over the world began sharing the story, amazed by Keanu's kindness and how he treated everyone with respect. At the same time, the airline crew finished their final duties. The captain came out of the cockpit and walked down the aisle to shake Keanu's hand. "Thank you for being such a wonderful passenger," he said. Keanu shook his hand and said, "Thank you for the jump seat, Captain. That was the best view I've ever had." The crew felt proud, knowing they had done something good for someone who deserved it. They took a quick photo together, no fancy lights or cameras, just big smiles and a memory to last a lifetime. Outside the plane, in the busy airport, news of the flight kept spreading. Some reporters picked up the story, writing headlines like, "Keanu Reeves flies economy, wins hearts with his humility." Many people who read the news felt inspired, saying things like, "Fame didn't change him. He's still the same kind person." Others said, "The world needs more stories like this." Keanu's quiet actions had touched people far beyond the flight, reaching into homes and hearts all around the globe. On talk shows and entertainment news, people began discussing the story. "Why do we care so much?" One host asked, another answered, "Because in a world where many famous people act like they're above everyone else." Keanu reminds us how to be human. People talked about how he helped fellow passengers, how he accepted the economy seat without complaint, and how he thanked the crew for their work. Every detail made the story more powerful. Keanu himself did not go online to talk about the flight. He didn't post any pictures or brag about what happened. He just went on with his day, as quietly as he had boarded the plane. But his fans noticed, and so did many strangers. They shared their own stories about meeting Keanu in the past, how he had helped someone at a subway station, or bought coffee for a homeless man, or waited in line just like anyone else. These stories came together, painting a picture of a man who treated everyone with the same respect, no matter who they were. The airline received many messages from people praising the crew and the captain. Some people wrote letters saying, "Thank you for treating Keanu kindly, and for showing the world what good service really looks like." Others said, "You made our day just by sharing a little kindness." The airline management took notice, and some staff even received special praise for their actions. The story became a good example for other airlines, reminding everyone that even a small act of respect can mean a lot. Meanwhile, for the passengers who had been on the flight, it became a memory they would treasure. Some said they would tell the story to their children. Others said they felt inspired to be kinder to others in their own lives. The young boy who had waved at Keanu from across the aisle couldn't stop talking about the experience. He told his friends at school, "Keanu Reeves was on my flight, and he talked to me." That one simple moment gave him hope that famous people could be just as kind as anyone else. The little girl who gave Keanu her drawing showed her friends the thank you note he wrote on the back. She felt proud and happy, thinking her art had made someone smile. Even adults felt changed by what they saw. They realized that being famous didn't mean you had to act better than anyone else. People around the world kept sharing the story. More news sites covered it, and it was talked about in many countries. Some people called it the kindness flight. Others said it was a lesson for everyone, not just celebrities, but for anyone who traveled, worked in customer service, or met strangers in their daily life. For days and weeks after, the story of Keanu Reeves on the plane kept spreading. It became more than just a story about a celebrity. It was about the power of humility, respect, and simple goodness. People were reminded that class was not about money or special seats, but about how you treated others. Keanu had shown the world that even the smallest actions, like a smile, a kind word, or accepting a mistake, with grace, could change someone's day and maybe, in some small way, change the world. So the flight ended, but the lesson lived on. People everywhere felt a little more hopeful, believing that if one person could make a difference by being kind, then maybe everyone could, and all it took was a simple plane ride, a missed first-class seat, and a heart full of respect for others. After the flight, when Keanu Reeves stepped off the plane and walked through the airport, he didn't act like a superstar. He carried his own bag, waited in line at customs, and thanked the staff as he left. Most people didn't even notice him at first, but a few recognized his face and smiled. Some whispered to each other, "That's Keanu Reeves, he's really here." Keanu's journey that day was almost over. He felt tired but happy. The flight had been long, and so much had happened. Still, he moved calmly, never rushing or showing any signs of being upset about the first-class mistake. For him, the important thing was getting home, and he knew that sometimes life didn't go as planned, but how you reacted was what really mattered outside the airport. The story of what had happened on the plane was already spreading everywhere. People who were on the flight posted messages online. Some shared photos of Keanu sitting in the middle seat, or stories about how he smiled at them. Others talked about how he visited the cockpit, spoke kindly to the crew, and treated everyone around him with respect. The news spread quickly, and soon, newspapers and TV channels picked up the story. Reporters wrote articles about the humble star in economy class, and Keanu Reeves wins hearts with his kindness. People on social media made videos and posts, sharing their favorite Keanu moments. Hashtags like #KindKeanu and #ClassAndEconomy began to trend. Many people who read about the story were inspired. Some said, "I wish more celebrities could be like him." Others said, "It's not about how much money you have, but about how you act when things go wrong." Comments and messages from fans all over the world filled the internet. People shared their own stories about Keanu, how he had helped someone in need or taken time to talk to a fan. The kindness he showed on the flight was just one more example of who he was as a person. A few days later, a TV host mentioned the story in an interview with Keanu. She smiled and asked, "People are talking about how you handled the flight situation. How did it feel to sit in economy and then get invited to the cockpit?" Keanu laughed softly and shrugged. "I was just glad to get home. The crew was wonderful, and the captain was very kind to let me see the cockpit. It was a cool experience, but really, I'm no different from anyone else. Sometimes things happen, and you just have to go with it." The host nodded. "People said you were humble and respectful to everyone, even though you lost your first-class seat." Keanu replied, "We're all just people. It doesn't matter if you're famous or not. Everyone deserves kindness. The staff did their best, and I wanted to show them respect too." That interview went viral, and even more people started talking about what happened. News sites around the world shared clips of Keanu's words. Teachers told their students about the story. Some parents even used it as an example for their kids. "See, you can always be kind, no matter what happens." Back at the airline, the crew from that special flight were also feeling proud. They received emails and messages from people saying thank you. Some airline workers told their managers that they wanted to treat every passenger with the same respect they showed Keanu. The captain and flight attendants talked about how a small act, a simple invitation to the cockpit, had changed the whole atmosphere of the flight. They felt happy knowing they'd done the right thing. The passengers who were on the plane also kept the memory close. Some framed the photos they took with Keanu. The young boy who waved at Keanu from across the aisle told all his friends about how the movie star talked to him and made him feel important. The little girl who drew a picture for Keanu kept a thank you note from him in her backpack. Her parents said she looked at it every day, reminding herself to be kind. For Keanu, the story was just one part of his life. He continued to make movies and live simply. He didn't try to get attention or act special, but people noticed his actions. The story became a favorite among fans and even people who didn't watch his films. It became a story about what it means to have true class, not the kind that comes from money, but the kind that comes from the heart. Some people said the story changed how they thought about celebrities. Others said it helped them think about how they could act in their own lives. If Keanu could accept a mistake with patience, treat others with respect, and turn a small disappointment into a moment of kindness, then maybe everyone could try to do the same. In schools and workplaces, people talked about the lesson from the flight. It doesn't matter if you sit in the front or the back. What matters is how you treat the people around you. That was the message that stayed with everyone long after the plane had landed. It was a lesson for young and old, rich and poor, famous and unknown. The story of Keanu Reeves being denied first class, and how the captain changed everything, became more than just a story about a flight. It became a story about respect, patience, and simple human kindness. People everywhere remembered that day, not just because a movie star was on their plane, but because he showed the world how powerful it is to be humble, gentle, and good to others, even in a small seat. Keanu's heart made the whole world a little bigger, and so as time passed, people still shared the story. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. It was a story of hope, kindness, and the simple truth that class is never about where you sit, but about the love and respect you show to everyone along the way.